Hello and good afternoon. I know it's quite difficult to bring people to talk about catalogs at 4 p.m., especially on Thursday. And adding to the pressure, I've got a sore throat as well. Thanks to all the conversation I had since morning with the vendors. I was actually trying to have conversation just to grab a freebie from them, but the things have changed a little there. They were hiding the freebies at the back, and they were only letting it out after a 10-minute chat. So apologies if I'm coughing a lot during the presentation. I'm a civil servant, not a vendor, so if I mention any product, it's purely something that I've tried and tested in my past experiences. I can tell you that I've not been sponsored by any of those. When it comes to the catalogs, I think the trends have been changing quite significantly, very, very quickly, especially over the last few years. And the new trends are having a conversational layer to the catalog, whether it's via chat or searches, via APIs, or having a voice conversation. But when you look at the bigger problem, the problem is still the same. I started working with data 22 years ago, and the problem was like, let's fix our data. 22 years later, I worked for Scottish government, and still we're trying to solve the same problem. Let's fix our data again. And the reason that we are unable to fix because the data increases significantly very, very fast. Technology changes and adaptability and the processes really stops standardization to take place. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about a lot of things that data has the problems with. I will cover a couple of things here. So the biggest problem that we have is the data sits in silos, especially if you're in large organizations like a government or a public sector. And even a bank, that's quite a challenge as well, because the data sits in so many different environments, different warehouses, different clusters, even in Excel sheets. And nobody knows who owns this data, how it's been created. Nobody gets the full picture of it. And even a bigger problem is that the data doesn't have context. And we talk about context, we're actually talking about as simple as the metadata. When the data created like a decade ago, the people working with that data probably moved on their jobs. They're no longer in the business. Data moved around from different warehouses to warehouses. It ends up losing its meaning. And lack of that metadata attached to it causes a problem when it comes to searching the data. Another big problem that you have is, when you talk about democratizing your data, is the access to the data itself. And this is where we talk about having a shift left from data moving from hands of specialists into the hands of people who produce the data or own the data or needs to talk to the data. People like business analysts, product owners, who are not necessarily techies, but they actually need data to innovate, build more products, or use data one way or another in some of the pipelines. So when you talk about data democratization, you need to look into solving your basic problems, and that could be looked upon using a catalog. Why a catalog is very, very important when it comes to transforming your data or building anything with AI in general. Because the catalog is where you can actually document your metadata, your governance, the meaning, on top of it. You can even add glossaries, even add a lot of glossaries and terminologies and tag your data. For example, if you have a vehicle data, a vehicle could be represented as cars, trucks, motorbikes. They all represent vehicles, but you can tag it into the catalog, and when you go and search it, it really helps you find the data quite easily. And you need a catalog to maintain that information centrally so that everybody can refer to that dashboard. So traditionally, people used to think that the catalogs are actually for very technical experts like data stewards, data modelers, architects like myself. But the trends have changed recently. The catalogs are more targeted toward people who need the data to make the decisions. And those people could be, like as I said previously, BAs or product owners, or could be an admin staff as well. So what it does is that it adds not just the meaning to it, but leads to faster insights and better decisions. I'm not going to dwell too much on catalog because we are here in the governance theater, and I believe most of us know what a catalog is. So before I go and jump into some of the cutting edge technologies that we are building at my work, and obviously what others are building globally, let's look at the current trends of the catalogs. And this is what I've had a conversation with a number of catalog providers out there right now. So there are two categories. One is the third gen and the fourth gen. A lot of big players in the market are still stuck in the third gen status where everything is pretty much manual. Storage, process, ingestions, they still rely on very, very manual processes. That still takes time and requires specialist skills like stewardship and modelers, which is very, very hard to find and quite expensive to fund as well. Whereas the trend has now changed to the fourth generation, where the catalogs like Atlan, for example, they live on the cloud environment, very API driven, so that you can have your pipelines embedded with your catalog as well. For example, a data science team looking for a schemata structure and understanding what the schemata actually means can actually call an API of your catalog and get the information out, rather than going sitting down with a modeler to understand what exactly the data they are bringing into their system. And the most important bit is that it helps with the democratization as well. The fourth generation is more about self-service rather than manual tedious processes. Now, when we talk about the fourth generation of catalogs, what's actually happening is there are two ways of doing it. Either you go to the route of vendor, or build up on a free open source catalog. For example, ourselves, we have adopted Data Hub as an open source catalog, which is actually, I think it was developed by LinkedIn and partially by Airbnb. It's probably the number one catalog out there. It's their claim, not mine. It gives you a very good UI interface, GraphQL, and REST APIs to connect to. And what we have done is that we have vision to build a semantic layer on the top of that existing catalog. Well, and I'll tell you later on why we did that. But first, let's look into what we have been doing. So we have opted for the knowledge graphs instead of a traditional database. Why? Because knowledge graphs really helps you identify edges and nodes. For example, if you're looking for a patient data, we can understand patient came through an ambulance, ended up in A&E, he got treated. Physician saw a patient, moved on to a ward, was given a medication, and then released. So all of those relationships can easily be fine-tuned and maintained within the knowledge graph, because that really helps define the edges and entities. The knowledge graphs, they mostly live on a GraphDB, but not necessarily have the data. They just have the information or schemata about the knowledge graphs. So what we have done in the semantic layer is we have built an automated pipeline of metadata by following a couple of processes where we do profiling. We have brought in open source toolings like Monte Carlo and Great Expectations. Again, they're open source and free to use. That really helps us detect the quality of the data before we go into your pipelines of automating the metadata on the top. And then we build ontologies. So ontologies, if I can give an example of a healthcare, which is where we are mostly interested in spending our time and effort and money. For example, a patient visits a hospital, sees a clinician, and gets a diagnostic. So that's an outcome. And then that outcome could be followed by the medication received and the treatment that was done on the patient. So it could actually become an ontology. But when we solve an ontology, the problem of synonyms is still present, because in the database, the clinician that accessed the patient didn't write down the name of the disease. It's actually written down a medical terminology. It has special codes for that. And then it becomes very, very difficult when you're trying to democratize this data, because by democratizing data, you want to expose natural language as a conversational layer for your layman users, because they don't understand those technical terminologies themselves. I built an example in a slide, the one after synonyms, to give you a better idea of how synonym-based tagging can actually help reduce time to insights. But it's very, very important to understand a synonym-based tagging can really help you understand the data, add context to it as well. And when we were looking into synonyms, we got another problems of hyponyms. And I didn't realize that hyponym is actually a word in the dictionary only when we saw the problem in the data. So we were trying to search for apple in the agriculture space, that how many apple trees there are in Scotland, and the data was like too massive, and we came to a conclusion that we're probably looking at a Europe-wide data, because there are so many apple trees that we don't think that we have in Scotland. But then we realized that our searches are actually searching the apple as a device as well as a part of an outcome. So hyponyms are actually help us define an apple is a fruit and not necessarily a device. And that really helps add a lot of context and meaning to the data as well, built in our semantics. I'll give you an exercise to give you an example of how the synonym-based tagging can actually help speed up insights and data discovery. So this is a disease that has 3 different synonyms represented in the database that we have. So I'll give you a couple examples, and maybe a show of hands can actually help me with the exercise as well. So how many of you think that this is a disease related to your pancreas or around the stomach? Okay, I've got 3 hands there. People who think this is a heart disease. Okay, 10 or 12 hands. So this was actually a heart disease. Now, we came up with this problem because somebody in the executive team in one of the hospitals were asking for, we want to improve our services in the cardiac area to understand how many mortalities and recoveries taking place, so that we can understand whether we need to invest in maybe adding more beds or improving our services in an A&E or medication. There's a lack of positions available. But it was all written in the data, and we were trying to search the data. The people who were searching the data, like myself, who are data experts but not necessarily medical experts. So we were unable to find any hard data, because we came to a realization that it's been represented as so many different names. And that's where the synonym came in. The only other option was for us to go and sit with the data analyst who has been working with this kind of data, who actually has a list of glossary items and terminologies and codes that have already been produced by him. And that took us a couple of weeks to get to that a simple SQL query that created and extracted the results out. But when we created this AI-based automation tool, what we did was we asked a simple question in an English language, and based on our semantics, it produced an outcome with the answers that's actually based in the database, represented very, very differently. Now, I don't want to overwhelm you with an SQL. People who are an SQL developer will see it's a very simple SQL query. But you will see that those 3 things that I'm pointed out to, cardiac arrest, endocarditis, and corpus malae, we would never be able to get to this point ourselves as a data guy, purely because we were searching for heart disease as per our national language query in English. But what our semantic layer did, because it has the concepts of synonyms being defined into the semantic layer, it went out and translated for us that, hey, you're asking for a heart disease data, but in the database it's represented as 3 different terminologies. So it constructed an SQL for us, which appears to be very, very simple, But if we had to go to a data analyst, it would have taken 2 weeks. The results were produced in 3 seconds. Now, when we started developing some of the toolings, and a lot of work that I do in my own garage, which I don't have one actually, is to build a framework. And we follow the simple framework to keep things very, very simple. Is you need to have a solid foundation layer where you fix your quality. We brought in tools like Monte Carlo and Great Expectations. We sorted out the data access using cryptography technologies, and we brought in free open source catalog. So there is a lot of cost saving be done here. Instead of working with a vendor, we opted for developing everything in-house, and we are still developing it. And the second layer is a semantic layer, because we realize that data without the context is useless data. And if you feed garbage data into AI, the garbage comes out very untrustable outcomes, which nobody's going to believe. And we also realize that we need to have a conversational layer where we can communicate with the data using natural language, and that's the only way to democratize data. Otherwise, no BA is going to be using any kind of tooling other than a conversational layer. Now, what I'm about to tell you in the next slide afterwards is something that I've created over the weekend as a demonstration that the 5th generation of catalog could be coming out in the next couple of years. And I've spoken with all of the catalog providers here and in the past so many elsewhere as well, that there is no human interaction in the catalog, for example, a voice or a video conversation. So when you talk about democratization, you're actually bringing data, shifting left from specialists to the hand of people who are used to talking to people. For example, a BA is very, very used to sitting down with a data analyst drafting an SQL. So there is a lot of human interaction happening. They would never feel comfortable to move away from that human element of it unless we replace the human with a tool that can also have a human-like interaction. As I said, the UI is not very, very good. I created it over the weekend, but it's just to give you a thought and an idea that how a human-like interface could be easily created with a better UI. I can have those conversations just like a human, and we are actually truly democratizing it. So in this case, when I click the video, a clinician is asking a question about cardiac disease, and then an operation team is asking about some kind of analysis. I've recorded that so that instead of giving a live demo, which usually often fails in my case, so I've recorded it in case it doesn't fail, just to give you an idea of you can have a conversation with the human-like interface that will bring an SEO and data out for you.
Manager, the initial on what grounds need to ask. How many patients with cardiac arrest are currently admitted?
There are 80 patients with cardiac arrest currently admitted.
Yeah, and then secondly, at the board level, executives might want to look at some outcomes. For example, how many cardiac arrest patients recovered versus deceased last quarter?
Last quarter, 66 cardiac arrest patients recovered, while 51 deceased.
As you can see, we can look at the chart, visualize it, and we can also look at it as well if we had files and the data for reasons.
Right. So obviously we can, if I had more time, the UI would have been much more attractive, and this could be made part of the catalog, because catalog is where you're fixing the foundations for building your semantic layers as a microservice. And then this layer, which is very, very easy, I built it using Anam.ai in 5 hours. That means that if you really had the motivation to do that, you can actually use this technology, which is readily available. And I believe that this is for the vendors as well. If they really want to sell their products to convince people to democratize truly, they really need to bring in a human element as well. Before I close, just one more slide. Build or buy, obviously, is a question a lot of people ask me when I talk about building semantic layers. And this is where the problem is. So if you have a lot of money and you want to ship the solution very, very quickly, then what you can do is you just go and work with the vendor. The good big names out there like Athlon. My choice is Informatica. I've got an Informatica background. Colibra. I've used all of those catalogs. But they would all work fine for you if you can spend £1 million or £2 million a year on licensing and scalability. But if you want to save that cost and you have time to spend upfront, I would rather suggest bring in the right expertise in-house and pick up a catalog just like myself that I've picked up. Data Hub as a foundation layer, it has a very simple, easy to use UI, a very, very large community of people developed by LinkedIn. And it's been maintained by Actual Data, who's very, very heavily funded as well, to give you a foundation and build the semantics on top of it that all of those vendors can offer. And they can actually customize it to your own needs and expectations as well. And a team of experts sitting in-house that can actually evolve as the technology is evolving, because the vendor is only going to improve based on the customer requests and feedback. And that's basically all about it. I just don't want to put words in your mouth that whether you should build or buy. If you want to ship something quickly, go for a vendor. If you want to do it right, and I think the best thing to do is take some time, bring in the right expertise and right people, and build it in-house for scalability. A quick summary of what we have learned today is data is your problem, especially when you're trying to automate anything using AI or shipping any LLMs connecting to your models or connecting to your data streams. The catalogs are important. This is because it becomes your document store, a map of your organizational data where it sits, and the ownership. You can define your governance on top of it. The shift then versus now, we're still stuck with generation 3 with a lot of big promises from a lot of big names. And there are a few Gen 4 catalogs like Atlan. Again, I'm not funded by Atlan, so it's something I've used and I really liked it. They offer a very good semantic layer and a conversation layer as well. But there is a Gen 5 coming out very, very soon, which will have a human-like interface to have a good conversation with data. And that's the path forward for us. Think about knowledge graphs and ontologies and synonyms, because knowledge graphs is what really help you bridge the attributes and entities together. And ontologies, they're widely available for healthcare, SNOMED, CT. It's a free to use. We use that ourselves to start up, and then we build our own custom ontologies using machine learning, which is more complicated. That's why I've not made it part of this presentation. But start small and think big. Subscribe to DAMA. I'm a committee member of DAMA. We're building DAMA Dembok version 3. I think the DAMA is, everybody knows, doing a wonderful, amazing job for the UK and globally as well. Their membership can offer you a lot of discounts on CDMB certifications, and obviously open a lot of doors for the materials that are available on the DAMA website. Like, share, and subscribe. I write a lot on my newsletter. A good solid audience that keenly follows the data ideas and some of the silly ideas like the video I've shown. They're always there. Happy for the questions now. Thank you. So yeah, I've got a hearing problem. You need to speak up very loudly. So.
One sec.
Okay.
So out of curiosity, did you integrate with a data governance tool like Purview as well, apart from the metadata catalog that's
Okay, so
by
Purview is a Microsoft tool.
Yeah, I mean, in case you work with Microsoft Stack.
Yeah, so it has open APIs, so we can integrate with anything.
But what did you choose to integrate?
So we integrate with Data Hub.
Does it have a Purview-like solution as well? Because it's like a University of Leeds, we have our centralized data catalog being built in metadata works, but we want to take a step forward and integrate metadata works with Purview, just to have that dashboard view. So, does data?
Okay, I got you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of catalogs, including Purview, in the in the public sector here in Scotland, and obviously we collaborate with the UK government as well. And somebody from University of Nottingham reached out to have an understanding of what we mean by talk to data. So we have standardized how we communicate between the catalogs, and the standards we have picked up is DCAT3. And you can use the APIs, and we got a middle layer that we have created. So Data Hub, neither Purview nor Informatica, they don't spit out DCAT3 formats. But it's quite easy to use LLM to convert, because they're quite similar. They spit out an XML form, and then you can change that into DCAT3 standard. There's so many standards like, Dublin Core and all that. Yeah. So DCAT is there, but the UK government follows DCAT3 anyway. In Ireland, they follow Dublin Core. And so that's the layer we are. It's not very amazing, but we are building. Yeah, it works. Yeah, it's easy spit out with an LLM, convert XML to DCAT3. And any further questions?
Yeah, thank you, Masood. I've got a question. So, the semantic layer, you showed a couple of the rules that go from, that translate a number of these three categories into heart disease, I think.
Yeah.
From the search. So where is that rule manifest? Is that in the data catalog or some other repository?
Right. Okay. So the data always stays in the warehouse. And that's the problem, because nobody will ever let you take it out unless it's built for a specific reason. So we can't bring it to our central repositories where we are actually building the semantic layer. So, but we have the semantic layer. We have the schemata knowledge. So currently we are working with structured data, not semi or unstructured. So we have the schemata knowledge of how the data is spread and across various different domains. So we brought that knowledge into the knowledge graph, so we know exactly where the data is, how to access it, and build custom ontology.
So do you have a tool then above or what tool do you have above the data warehouse?
The semantic layer is a bunch of tools.
Yes.
I think I showed you a slide deck with the framework
that's it.
there.
Go
So
back
I
to
think
that.
there are.
I'll ask you my very specific question.
Yeah. So I think there are a bunch of tools that I use.
Okay.
I'm not very married with quadrant vector stores, because the metadata is highly dimensional. So we store it in quadrant.
Okay, go
vector
back
stores.
just a couple of slides. So I just that's the one. Yeah. So where is that knowledge held that cardiac arrest and endocarditis and core pulmonale, these map to the previous one where the user?
Yeah, that stays in the knowledge graph.
Okay.
And we use GraphDB to store the knowledge graph.
Okay. Use GraphDB. Okay.
Because it's free, right? We could have used knowledge in Neo4j, but it's expensive.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Thank you.
we store it in GraphDB.
Hi, just a quick one on ontologies. Do you use any standard top-level ontologies for structuring your ontological design, or is it you alluded to that you also build ontology structures around ML and so on? So
Yeah. So for healthcare, SNOMED City, which is quite standard in NHS everywhere, and for airline there's IATA, and there are so many freely available ones. And they give you really good medicine codes and disease codes and all that. This is how the data is represented within the healthcare anyway, globally. But not all of it is represented because our data is not that amazing.
and just a secondary one. Do you use anything for constraints in ontology? Do you things like shackle or in order to set rules within ontology?
Yeah. So we use that, yeah. But the new ones we are building, we are approaching it with a different approach altogether. Is we are also embedding business taxonomies as well, because ontologies were stopped making sense to us to a certain extent, because the business taxonomy was not very, very clear. Just the nature of NHS and healthcare, because there is PHS and then there is mental health and there is some other health. So the business taxonomy wasn't really making sense, that what the data is displayed doesn't make sense for PHS and other organizations. So we are taking a brand new approach to look at it. I don't really have the tooling idea right now. It's just in an idea state. So.
We could spend a while talking about ontologies, so I'll
Sure,
probably
sure.
hand them out.
Right. Okay. I think that's everything, I believe. Cool. I think those are all the questions. Thank you very much.